Welcome to Moto Camp. I'm Sterling. In this episode, I'm traveling through what could potentially be America's next national monument. We'll drive down some great backcountry roads, check out some historic sites, and have a great evening camping out in the desert. All that and more in this episode of Moto Camp. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that. In this part of the video, I'm going to tell you about where I went, what I saw, and what I learned along the way. This ride was in Gila Bend, which is about an hour to the southwest of Phoenix, It's on the Interstate Highway, Interstate 8, between the Tucson and Phoenix area to the east and Yuma, Arizona to the west. So I decided for this video that I just wanted to do a simple one-day ride. I wanted to pick a location in Arizona that could be a little bit warmer than the part of Arizona where I live. I'm down south at elevation 5,000 feet, so it gets pretty cold here in the nighttime. And so I decided I would head west of Phoenix out into the Sonoran Desert, and that's kind of why I chose the Gila Bend area to go ride around and explore. And I also felt like there might be a little bit more to see and do and experience in that area than I have done previously, and it turns out I was right. A lot of people pass through Gila Bend when they're driving down the interstate, and for most of them it's really just a chance to get some gas, maybe a meal, or spend the night in one of the motels. There is not a lot to see and do in Gila Bend per se, or at least that's what I thought. I've passed through that area several times on trips around Arizona, and I've stayed there a few times in the local motels and grabbed a bite to eat, but I've never really spent a lot of time giving the town much more of an opportunity to showcase what there is in that area. If you need a place to stay, there are some hotels in town, and there's also this quirky space age motel that was built in the early 60s, and it kind of has that same design aesthetic because it was built right around the time that the Space Needle in Seattle, Washington was built. So Gila Bend is about 200 miles from where I live in southern Arizona, and so I spent the first day of this trip just riding up to Gila Bend and getting a motel for the evening. I didn't really film too much on that day, just a little bit in the evening as the sun was going down, but basically everything in this video is from one day of riding. I did a giant loop around Gila Bend. I started in Gila Bend, and then I went north on historic Highway 80, and then I got off on the dirt road section of this route, which is the Agua Caliente road, and that put me back on the interstate to the west of Gila Bend, and I traveled down the interstate back to Gila Bend. The Gila River starts in southeastern Arizona and New Mexico. That's where the headwaters are located. It's fed by snowmelt and springs, and then it drops down out of the mountains and travels to the west across the Sonoran Desert before it ultimately reaches the Sea of Cortez in the Pacific Ocean. As I was doing some research before going out and shooting this video, that's when I discovered that this area is proposed to be a new national monument, and they call it the Great Bend of the Gila National Monument. It's a proposal. I'll put a link to the website in the PDF file about this proposal so you guys can check that out if you're interested. But to summarize it, they believe that the Gila Bend area really contains a number of important cultural, historic, and environmental things that are happening in that region that are worthy of protection and worthy of it becoming a national monument. Throughout history, Gila Bend has been a crossroads of culture. There have been different groups of people that have traveled through that area following the course of the river and left evidence of their travels. These include everything from prehistoric peoples to Native American and indigenous tribes, Spanish missionaries, monks, American explorers, pioneers, and today's travelers like myself. So this is historic US Highway 80, and when it was built around the 1920s, it was considered to be America's southernmost all-weather highway. In other words, it was the highway that you could drive all winter long to get from coast to coast. It started in San Diego and went all the way across the southern USA to Georgia. Parts of that highway have been replaced by the modern interstate system, but like Route 66 to the north, parts of it still remain. So one of the things I noticed traveling up Highway 80 was this massive solar farm, and that's because Gila Bend is on the cutting edge of solar technology. A lot of solar research has been done here, it's been pioneered here, and a lot of technologies relating to the solar industry have come out of Gila Bend. This is the Gillespie Dam bridge over the Gila River. The bridge was constructed in 1927. When it was completed, this bridge was one of the longest steel bridges in Arizona, and it remains one of the most significant historical bridges in the state. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1981. I stopped on this hill on the west side of the bridge overlooking the scene down below me. I heard that there were some petroglyphs on those cliffs that I was up above, but I didn't get off the bike and wander down there and explore, but it was, as you can see, a really amazing view of both the bridge and the dam down below me. As far as the dam is concerned, it was constructed in 1921 by a farmer named Frank Gillespie. There were a series of earthen and wood and stone dams in this place before, but they would get washed out by the river. And so he gathered up the resources and the financing, and they built this dam. It's a concrete gravity dam. It's 20 feet tall, and it has a series of arches on the front end and then a concrete slab on the back. Interestingly enough, the dam partially collapsed in 1993. You can see that here, and it was never repaired. And so today, it's kind of become a vibrant riparian habitat, a river habitat for animals and birds and things like that. So Agua Caliente Road is the off-road backcountry part of this ride, of this trip that I took. And it's a graded dirt road. It's not difficult at all. You could do it in a passenger car. I'm going to say it's about 50 miles or so of dirt. And you get to the start of it right off of Highway 80, and then it travels to the west through the Sonoran Desert. It's a beautiful drive. It starts out kind of traveling through the lowland, cactus and all the different types of desert vegetation that's out there. And as the ride progresses, you get up into these really cool mountains with some twists and turns and scenic views. And it's just a really fun, beautiful backcountry road through the Sonoran Desert. So this place here is called Sundad. And apparently, from what I understand, it was a tuberculosis sanatorium in the 1920s. And because tuberculosis is so highly contagious, they didn't want to put people in Phoenix at risk, and so they moved those patients out to this area. And also, they believed that the desert climate and the dryness would be good for tuberculosis. There's not a lot of evidence of that facility out there. There's some ruins, some concrete slabs, and interestingly enough, all of these rocks that somebody or different people have placed over the years in these different patterns, I wasn't able to quite grasp the significance of the patterns, and that's why I put the drone up in the air so I could look down and see what I was looking at. There were a few other sites in the area that I wanted to check out of historical importance, but I was kind of running out of daylight, and so when I made it to this campground, I decided to spend the night here, and I'm really glad that I did. This is the Painted Rock Petroglyph Campground, and as you can see, it's in a beautiful Sonoran Desert location. It was a great place to camp. I cooked a really good meal. I cooked mushroom trio pasta. I'll put a link to that recipe on my website if you're interested. But the highlight of this campground are the petroglyphs that are here. And as you can see on these rocks, there are just literally hundreds of petroglyphs carved into the rocks by Native Americans and other people throughout the years since then. And these petroglyphs are just one site of many, 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 many more in this area. In fact, this entire area is considered to be one of the most significant collections of rock art in the entire Southwest. And that's another reason why they want to turn this area into the Great Bend of the Gila National Monument. Well, that's it for my journey through the potential Great Bend of the Gila National Monument. If you ever come down to this part of the Southwest and central Arizona, you might want to come to this area yourself. I hope that you found this video inspiring and entertaining. I'd really like to thank one of my sponsors, Moscow Moto, for setting me up with the great backcountry 35-liter pannier system that I use on my Husqvarna. I'll post notes from this video and website links to additional resources, my map, my GPS tracks, all of those things on my website, link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, drop a comment down below, give it a like and thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.